Hey, it's Renee Keel, host of TradeIQ and Chief Operating Officer at BrokerBin, the leading B2B exchange for IT professionals, resellers, and wholesalers. I'm thrilled to introduce TradeIQ to you, the podcast that shares the economic stories of IT hardware resale. Each episode, I interview an industry leader who embodies what it takes to realize success in the ever-changing and highly competitive secondary IT market. What does it truly mean to be an ITAD provider? How do companies mitigate supply chain risks? How can your business thrive amidst changing market conditions that eat away at profit margins? Explore these topics and more on TradeIQ from BrokerBin.com. And while I have your attention, I want to personally invite you to attend a BrokerBin Roadshow. This biannual event brings together ITAD and ITAM providers, wholesalers, resellers, and service professionals all under one roof for 2.5 days of high-value networking. Where else can you make a true, authentic connection with other IT professionals in our industry? Join us in Europe in the spring and in the US in the fall. Learn more and register at brokerbinroadshow.com. Arnav Kejriwal is the Vice President of Partnerships and Strategy at MET International located in Dallas, Texas. MET is a certified refurbisher and reseller of pre-owned IT equipment for enterprises and data centers. Additionally, MET has a mobility division offering buyback, testing, erasure, and repair for mobile devices. Arnav literally grew up in the business. In 1988, his parents, Sashi and Sangeeta, started buying used computers at a sidewalk sale to repair and resell. The business took off and shifted into servers, which led to the formal launch of MET International in 1994. While in school, Arnav would spend his summer breaks interning for his father. Today, they work side by side along with many employees who have been with the company for 15 or more years to consistently add value to their customer relationships. On this episode of TradeIQ, Arnav and I discuss what it takes to build and sustain a family legacy. It takes patience, focus, and intention to keep customers happy and coming back. Arnav sums it up best when he says the secret to long-term success is this: don't be greedy and share the love. Good morning, Arnav. How are you?
Good, Renee. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you and BrokerBin for having me.
Yeah, this is really fun. This is one of my most favorite parts of my job, to be honest. Not necessarily being on video, but being able to talk to our clients like this. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to kind of get away from emails and doing bids and whatnot and just get a chance to talk a little bit about the industry. So I appreciate it.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Well, let's jump in. Tell us about your company.
Yeah, so MET International was founded in 1994. It started as a family-owned business. My parents, Sashi and Sangeeta, founded it formally in 1994, though they kind of had the origins earlier in 1988, while they were still living in Kansas at the time.
Okay.
Based in Dallas, Texas, and our focus is to be a refurbisher and reseller of pre-owned IT equipment to enterprises. And our main specialty is data center products such as server hardware, storage, networking. We also have a division that focuses exclusively on mobility products such as phones and tablets.
Great. Wow. And so I'm gonna ask how you got into this business, but it sounds like you were born into it.
I was, myself, I was born into it. I've been around it from a very young age, but there's a lot to still be learned just from talking to some of the people that have been around here even longer than me. So
Sure. Yeah. And so did you ever did you go do something else and come back to the business, or is this all you've done?
I did work in financial services for a number of years after graduating. It actually was happenstance that I came back into the business just because my employer at the time wanted me to be back in Dallas. But before that, my first internships were with MET in high school and college. And when I was in middle school, I don't know if labor laws allow that, but I would come on my summer breaks and help sort memory. And, at that time we would rubber band memory together. And
Oh my gosh.
we had a memory room and I would sort the whole room. And then the boss, my dad, would tell me, hey, you got to start over and we're going to do another inventory cycle. So
Oh my gosh.
something else, but great experience,
That is really a great experience. Wow. And so, wow, that's cool. That's really cool. So from those middle school days until today, what is something that has surprised you about your journey?
Um, I think that the industry is constantly changing. I think, being in the IT space, you see that every year, every few years, like the manufacturers are going to constantly be releasing new types of equipment. There's going to be new phases in the industry. Right now, of course, is a very exciting time for the industry with all this hype around AI and GPU and Chat GPT and all these different things that are out there. But I think the thing that constantly surprises us here is that, the same foundational principles of trading, of good business, of what it means to provide value to customers, those equations stay the same over time. Maybe the inputs change a bit, but we've focused very clearly rather than kind of getting drawn away by the waves of saying, look, let's continuously just focus on the same thing of providing value to customers, working with them, working with vendors that have issues determining how to value that product. And if we do the right thing and trust our gut, we'll be successful over time. And it's surprising at times, but it constantly works out in our favor.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what has been your biggest setback and how did you recover from it?
It's an interesting question, and it's one that I talked to Sashi, my father, about to kind of hear some of his stories.
Uh-huh.
And I think he has a host of setbacks in the 90s and early 2000s that, sometimes just blend together. But the earliest one he really remembers is 2009, 2010. That's kind of the time frame that MET was getting to be a part of some of the selling of the Facebook equipment that was coming to the market for really the first time in large volumes. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
it was an exciting time because you're talking, five-figure, six-figure number of servers hitting the market.
Yeah.
I think at the end of that process, it was over 100,000 servers that MET took in, and we weren't
Wow.
necessarily direct. We were working with different partners in the industry that maintain these relationships and did what's now known as maybe the ITAD, the disposition of those assets. But one of the biggest challenges we faced was that there were 10 or 20,000 processors of the same model hitting the market. And at that time, the one Sashi, well, it'll always be kind of a black scar for him, the E5 2660, the V1 CPU. They ended up overpaying quite drastically for that CPU, probably around $300 a CPU, and the last selling prices came out to be $40, $50, $60 a CPU.
Oh, shoot.
Well, it's one that Sashi would always have a smile on his face talking to people about, because he would say, look, I made a huge mistake and we lost a lot of money on that processor. But, it kind of is a good reminder that don't kind of get too absorbed into trading like a trading desk, stay calm. The market will change. A lot of the times it'll go down more often than it'll go up. We're in a product class that depreciates. Um, you know, don't try to focus too much on commodities, and don't get too concerned about mistakes one way or the other, even though that was a bigger mistake. But instead focus again on good business principles. Work with vendors that'll support you, work with customers that'll support you, focus on building solutions and value to customer. And then it was a good reminder to Sashi, especially, let's stay conservative when we're stocking, because all IT equipment to some extent is a ticking bomb. You don't know when it's going to depreciate or change in value. New product that's coming into the market every day, every year. It's really hard to value this stuff. And so it's a principle that has worked well for us. And sometimes we don't get deals because maybe the end user has an expectation that they can do better in the market. And we kind of have that conversation with them. Look, there's a lot of risk to this type of product. We've seen that before, and it's okay if you think that that's doable, but we have our own business principles, and that was a great learning experience from that. So
For sure. You're playing the long game.
the long game, and just we're not a gambler, let's put it that way. So there's better, that we'll save those for the BrokerBin Vegas shows.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about market trends, touched on it a bit. What industry trends are you watching?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting question just because I think the obvious one right now is all this hype around AI. And especially right now, there's going to be a lot more GPUs hitting the market because a lot of these big AI players bought their first really big batches of GPUs around that 3 to 4 year ago mark. So you're going to start seeing some of those GPUs start hitting our markets and start going up on places like BrokerBin. Um, but I think more generally than just the types of product, over the last, let's say, 10 years, there's been a lot of focus and consolidation of the industry in terms of, big ITADs or other companies with strategic goals of entering the space, building vertical integration, getting into maybe areas or geographies are not in today. So there's been a lot more private equity activity in our space. That's obviously resulted in changes for a lot of people that haven't necessarily sold their business, such as METs, the METs of the world. And then you see this constant evolution. I'm sure BrokerBin is seeing that same marketing trend where, 20 years ago it might have been called asset recovery, and then 10 years ago it's called ITAD, and now we're calling it circular economy.
Yeah, yeah.
And ultimately, the companies on BrokerBin, for the most part, are all kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But we've provided that same kind of value, but it's how you position it and how maybe the big guys out there are interested in positioning it
Yeah.
for whether it's environmental or branding or whatever the reason might be. So
Yeah.
those are kind of the trends that we're seeing, over time.
Yeah. And in that, is there anything that you see as a really, big opportunity for your business?
Um, I think the let's touch on the first one, that GPU piece. I mean,
Yeah.
naturally, companies like MET that are in the one of the unique things about MET is we are focused on stocking equipment. Uh,
Hmm.
Especially the name of BrokerBin is BrokerBin. Ultimately, the focus is finding companies that have stock and product, can ship it quickly, because the name of the game in IT is, how quickly can you get a certain product for your customer, right? Just
Yes.
because you can get a cheaper price in 2 weeks or 4 weeks through a different source, time is money in IT often. So we are starting to see more and more stock in GPU equipment. But then, our focus has always been on providing value to customers, such as building servers. Our main business for the last 15 years has been doing custom server builds for different customers we work with, whether it's end users or MSPs, data centers. We've been in that circular economy space since our inception. So we've seen more opportunities in remarketing that as a complete package to folks who are looking for some kind of certainty or assurance that, hey, your equipment's ending up in the right hands. It's being used for the right reasons, and it's also not necessarily just competing or hurting your own market in some way.
Mhm. Mhm. How is MET evolving? How are you evolving your business to adapt to those current market conditions? Are you feeling like you have to change strategy or change process?
We've always been a company that's tried to adapt. With and feel those changing winds. So back when my parents started the business, they got into the business in 1988. There was something called the sidewalk sale in Dallas where you could go and just find overnight deals on computers, and they realized that they could buy and repair computers and make some money doing it. So it started as a laptop repair business, then it shifted into desktops and import export, then it shifted into servers, and then it shifted into kind of building servers for end users or partners that needed kind of complete solutions. And in the last 6 or 7 years, we've gotten into data centers ourselves. So now we occupy data center space because we're trying to provide more value to our end customers and our partners that are serving those customers. So we've always been a company that's tried to find new services, listen to what our customers have to say, and the new things we're adapting to today are, 15 years ago, we pretty much only dealt in IBM product. And today we're seeing a lot of Supermicro. And the next phase we're seeing is a lot more of these ODM products, Quanta, Tyan,Ywin, some of these kind of off-name brands that most people in the States have never heard of, and stocking a lot more of those because ultimately there's a value to our customers. So I can't answer that yet because we're always 3 to 4 years removed from those big decommissions, but that's kind of always been our focus is, okay, where is there value to be had for the end customer in this equation?
Yeah, right. I was talking to somebody yesterday who said something very similar. Like it's really, customer driven, client driven. What is it that they need? And you have to be positioned to accommodate, right?
Well, it's so true. And the thing is that a lot of the times the customer might know what they want, but they don't know what they want.
Yeah,
So
right.
just yesterday we were asked, hey, we want to buy a Dell R660. We're trying to host this application. Well, Dell R660s, that's a 16th gen server. Um, they're on Dell's website for 25, 30, $40,000. And we understood, okay, look, they're trying to they found the spec on some website that
Yeah.
is running that specific application. Let's talk them through it, and we talked them through, look, you can save a lot of money going 1 or 2 generations older, taking a Dell R640 server, for example, which is a 14th gen, it'll do just what you need, and you don't need to spend that kind of money.
Yeah.
And there's more complex examples, but a lot of the times people just say, well, I want a Dell because I'm used to Dell, or I want an
Yeah.
HP because I'm used to HP. And it's like, well, look, with what you're doing, you might want to reconsider that if the goal is to kind of find a good value. So we also try to really understand what our customer truly is doing, because that helps us then give them solutions that will ultimately help them more than they realize they could kind of achieve in that scenario.
Yeah. The education and the consultation is really key. I just got to go back for a second and say that is really cool, the sidewalk sales story. I
You
love,
know, so
I love that.
the story, it's kind of a famous story in our family, because my mom at the time was in her master's program at Wichita State University, and she was in computer science, needed a laptop, so they went and bought a broken laptop for like $200 to $300. My dad figured out how to repair it, and they sold it for like $4,000, which
That is incredible.
like green cards coming from India, like that's money that you'd never fathom. So that was kind of the start of the business, and we actually kept going to the sidewalk sale until about 2017, 2018, and then it shut down right after COVID. So
Oh gosh. Well, that is a really cool story. It's
mhm.
it's it's like a legacy story, right? Like I love it.
Yeah, and some of our first employee, Peter Neiman, he was hired from those days at the sidewalk sale. So he's been with the
Wow.
company since before it was formally launched in 1994. So, it impacts us a lot here, because it just reminds us that, there's always some kind of value, there's always something you can do to give someone value.
Value, yes. I love that. I love that so much. So, and you talked, we've touched on AI a little bit, but are there other innovations, or maybe it's that innovation that you think are really going to be game changers in the industry?
I'm it's a really good question, Renee, and it's funny because I think I'm the wrong person to ask that,
Oh,
because ultimately MET is kind of our goal is going to be to see which innovations are the coolest and then buy those refurbished in like
yeah,
5.
right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think you're starting to see some of those things play out in our industry, where um, AI, or even if it's not true AI, but more just like automations and e-commerce or value recovery, have helped a lot more people achieve the ability to just sell inventory quickly, which that's the biggest goal is, how do you get products sold once you bring it in? A lot of people are finding it easier and easier to solve that challenge as things become more automated. Um, but I'm also seeing a lot of things in processing, such as like robotics for chip harvesting or pulling processor and memory. Um, for us, it looks cool and it seems interesting. At some point that might become economical for most people to actually do.
Hmm.
But we've also seen a lot of customers or data centers in the space that are now bringing in robotics to build servers for them at scale. So
Wow.
again, those are things that as those guys upgrade to the newer generations of this gear, we might look at kind of bringing some of that into our space. But for now, we have a lot of technicians that have been here for actually for quarter end, we're celebrating one of our technicians' 15th year anniversary. So,
Oh,
we have a lot of skill here, and at our scale, I'm not sure automation like that makes sense, but
sure.
there also needs to be a lot of kind of intelligence that goes behind custom server builds, at
Yeah,
this level. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Kind of along the same lines, where do you see the industry headed in the next 5 to 10 years?
yeah, it's another good question, and I think some of that consolidation we're seeing now, I think it'll certainly continue. There's constantly other folks in other industries or private equity that are trying to get into ITAD and the circular economy space. So I think that'll continue. And I think that the success and the challenge will both be that, you have to be able to work with your customers and vendors. We've seen often that, when, let's say, a vendor is trying to kind of maybe bring on a strategic customer, it might help in the short term, but then long term, it might hurt their ability to work with other players that they used to work with. So we're seeing that trend continue where, there will be consolidations, and companies like MET will get asked, hey, are you guys looking to sell or buy or whatever it might be? And, we're happy where we are. So it's fun to read the news and see what happens. But, the other piece is that, we're kind of watching for how the GPU market's going to play out over the next few years, because for the last few years, it's been all of the hype. And this year, I would say we're really starting to see that first big wave hit the market of GPU decommissions. And, I think the next 5 to 10 years will be very interesting, because there's always kind of this, this bubble that has to pop a little bit, maybe not to the full extent, but, how are people going to react to use GPUs hitting the market? And it's going to transform the game a bit, because this concept of needing the newest and latest and greatest, that starts to flatten out a bit as, some of the folks we work with offer that and start educating customers. No, what you're doing, you can do on equipment that's 3, 4 years old. It's the same value equation. Do you really need to be buying or using the brand new NVIDIA, H200s, or, what do you actually need for your applications? So that's kind of what we're forecasting and expecting. And outside of that, Peter, the person I mentioned just a short while ago, who's been with us for 30 years, told me, look, Arnav, I enjoy selling, the bread and butter. I don't necessarily need to sell I can't give you a good analogy there, but something fancy,
Yeah, latest and greatest, the shiny stuff.
and greatest every time. I'm a lot of custom, even to run that stuff, you still need that core infrastructure around it.
Yeah.
As long as we also focus on that and don't forget about that position. So
yeah. This is on a different level, obviously, but you think about it just in people's personal everyday lives with your cell phones or whatever. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't need to. I just got this phone. I don't, and for me, I'm now of the age where like it's too confusing to change my phone every year, right? Like it's working fine. Why do we need to upgrade our phones constantly?
well, and in the data center world, there's all this talk about newer stuff is going to be more environmentally friendly, might consume power, but there's so much manufacturing demand that also goes into that.
Yeah.
So if we truly support circular economy, we should be supporting concepts like, hey, let's get more refurbished servers in the hands of operators.
Yes. Amen. Because also like the manufacturing of the new, but where's all the old go? Like, what are you going to do with all this? Where's all that going?
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah. Speaking of, what is it that makes your company sustainable and resistant to big challenges?
I think we've touched on that in terms of some just of our core principles and business and trading. We don't chase deals, meaning, we stay true to the fact that we believe that both our supplier and our customer and us need to come out ahead in the equation for it to make sense. So, as long as we focus on that core question of value to the customer, we find that often answers how to succeed in an industry, even when maybe it's a down year, maybe it's a bad economy, maybe customers aren't sending big POs. That's okay. It can be in smaller chunks, but IT is needed to some degree. It's just a question of who needs it and where they need it. So, there's been years where maybe the end user audience isn't as let's say, open to spending in the US as they are in other countries. So, we focus more on shifting that product to some of our partners elsewhere. So, it's just a matter of give and take, and not being too greedy. We found that let everyone kind of make money in the equation, and we'll make our fair share as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in respect to reuse and recycling, what do you feel still needs to happen to achieve circularity?
Very good question, I think. And, we're an R2V3 certified downstream. So
Great.
we do a lot of R2V3 projects where we bring in equipment and we give those certificates to our customer that it's being recycled or destroyed in accordance with whatever they might need. And R2V3 has obviously been very good for the industry as a whole. I think from our perspective, I think the biggest lack of transparency is still around what happens to equipment that doesn't enter into reuse, right? So if it's entering reuse, if MET is putting it back into servers and sending that to customers, that's a fairly easy kind of equation to understand. You don't need a lot of color to paint that picture, but for stuff that needs to get scrapped, whether it's for recyclables like chip recycling, or maybe it's metal recovery, or maybe it's something else. I'm not too sure. I guess the question is, what's happening to those equipments? And I think the challenge is how do you create transparency without affecting the companies doing that? Because they obviously don't want to give away trade secrets, but there should be a little bit more transparency around the environmental impact of that stuff that's not re-entering the reuse space. Because there even drives, like big companies that want to shred drives, they have to, what's happening to those metals? There should be some way to quantify that impact to the supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely. I suspect that if most of us knew what that impact was, we would we would do a lot more to not be so consumable with our electronics.
Yeah, and I mean, if I tell you, hey, if you tell me, I've got to destroy a bunch of hard drives, I need them shredded versus like degaussed versus whatever other options might be. Well, okay, there's different channels for what could happen to that equipment. And okay, what are the different environmental considerations there for what could happen to that? And right now, like a lot of the times an organization will just have, okay, is it recycled, is it reused, or is it destroyed? And it's like, okay, what does destroyed mean? What does recycled really mean in that equation? Just because you have a requirement that it's recycled or destroyed, let's understand what's happening to that equipment. And so I think, I mean, there's obviously companies doing that, but as a whole, I think that's the piece that from a recycling standpoint can gain a bit of transparency over the, let's say, coming decade.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. So again, and we've talked a lot about this, just the landscape of the tech industry constantly changing. How do you challenge yourself and your team to be thinking out of the box and to not get stuck into a mindset of like, this is how we've always done it? I mean, that obviously wouldn't work, right? You have to be evolving. And so how do you keep yourselves creative and thinking beyond what you're currently doing?
Yeah, I mean, we like to say at MET, we've been around for over 30 years now. And a lot of companies have naturally come and gone in that time, whether they couldn't sustain or they just no longer had the passion to do this. We've always maintained that. So, we like to say that we kind of flow with the wind to a degree. As I referenced, we started with laptops. Now we're doing full servers and data centers. We even provide co-location to customers that need it for servers that we sell. So we're kind of always asking the question, okay, what do our customers need to find value with us? Both, not just in the product, but in the service and the support. They should find a value in that entire offering that we're giving them. And so if we start questioning, hey, where's the value? Are we just brokering this equipment? That's when we start to say, okay, hey, we either are doing the wrong thing on this topic, or we need to rethink how we're going to approach that. And so, we talked about some of the ODMs entering the market. Well, Dell and HP, these are always going to be reliable brands in the US market, but they're also a little commoditized. Now customers that are looking for value might be able to find that in other brands, as an example. And the mobility is a great example. In 2017, we realized that the folks we were working with also had opportunities and buyback of mobility equipment that they didn't necessarily know what to do with at that time, because it was a fairly immature space. And so we built an entire division, and now it's just as big as our data center division, where we're just focused on mobility products, finding issues that people are having decommissioning, or I should not say decommissioning because that's for data centers, but like getting rid of that equipment and data wiping it, figuring out value recovery, those same problems, but in a completely different product space than what we were used to at the time. That's starting to evolve into things like wearables, like for instance, the Apple AirPods you have, what's the best way to wipe those? When you're putting those in the Gaylord, you have to get rid of the name. Like if it says Renee's headphones, you don't want that to show up on someone else that buys that. So we come up with creative solutions in that division where we say, okay, how do we, and I'm going to talk a little bit unscientifically here because I don't, do that stuff myself, but like new cool stuff like try different radio frequencies or Bluetooth frequencies to reach that equipment and get rid of the name because you're talking about 10,000 headphones that each have different. So they do a lot of creative things to figure out, okay, look, there's something here that doesn't have a solution or that the market doesn't know what to do with yet. How do we do it?
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that will come at some point with like smart fridges and, all sorts of stuff. But that's kind of how we focus on, okay, this does not have a solution, so let's think about one.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you just got me really thinking about all of our devices that actually most of my devices say mom because my son has to set them up. So it's like mom's iPhone, mom's AirPods. Oh, funny.
I'm sure people out there have TVs that say like Arnav's Netflix on it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, because we log in and all these. Yeah.
And so, I mean, we're not in the television game, but I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that have found their niche doing that too. Like just figuring out, okay, how do we data wipe a television without making it economical? That's also the challenge. You have to be economical to sell it to the customer. So.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot to think about. What motivates you specifically to keep doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, two big things. One is that it's kind of incredible to be part of a family legacy like this.
Absolutely.
It goes beyond just business. There's, at the dinner table, we have a lot of fun conversations about stories in the space. A lot of the people at MET are family. They've been here, we have 2 employees that have been here since before 2000. So a lot of people that have been here 15, 20, 25 years. So it's exciting to come and do new things over time, but with the same people and stay true to the same principles that you have during that process. And the other piece is, just over the last decade of really getting into data centers, I've found a passion in the space. I love being in data centers. That's what led us to kind of launch some of those services that we offer in data centers. It brought us into ITAD because we knew that we could provide competitive and creative solutions to customers. So we just love being in data centers, talking infrastructure with other IT nerds. When people come here, we like to tell them that our warehouse is server Disneyland. So, it's fun to be in the space. I don't miss the days of financial services where you're just looking at a screen and numbers all day.
Yeah, yeah. What have you learned from other generations? Now, obviously, you've learned quite a bit from your dad and your mom in this business, but what have you learned from other generations, younger or older, that has propelled you forward in your career?
Yeah, I mean, from the older generations, I think sometimes just being patient, even though it's a fast-moving industry, being patient and focusing on what makes sense in this equation, whether it's the customer, whether it's the product, just being a little bit more intentional about decisions and stocking in the space, because ultimately you can't stock everything, you can't buy everything, you don't want to win every deal. That wouldn't be a good idea in this space. So how do you decide what makes sense? And so sometimes the younger generation, which when I started was me too, focuses on the wrong thing, which is, okay, I want this one, I want this one, I want this one. And you got to kind of pause and think about what makes sense to your business and to your customers. And from the younger generation, we do have some team members that have come on in the last, let's say, 5 years that are on the younger side, and they're just so creative with using technology that it's kind of mind-boggling.
Yes.
And we highly encourage people to use like ChatGPT or whatever GPT they want to use here, because we tell them, look, like as long as you're not sending emails to customers or writing content for websites that are generated by AI, you should absolutely be creative with solutions, because we don't want a bunch of robots working at MET. We don't want to replace it with like AI chatbots. We want people that are trying to be creative, finding solutions, because that's where you can be different than everyone else. So, you know, it's fun to watch them because now I feel a bit old when I'm like, okay, I didn't know you could do that. So
I know. It's amazing to watch this generation that was, you know, born into technology, right? You know, it's just amazing. It's just amazing to watch. Even just how quickly they can navigate a device blows my mind. Anyway, you've talked a lot about some of your core values and things that you guys really work towards and you do infuse throughout your company's culture. What does that look like? What do those things look like in terms of your customer relationships?
you know, it's the same principles. We don't really like the one and done customer relationship where it's just, hey, I need this. Okay, here's a quote, buy it, move on. Because, you know, we're very much against just commoditizing the product we have or commoditizing, uh, you know, all the bids that we're doing. Our goal is, okay, you know, there needs to be more than just a SKU involved or
Yes.
build. There needs to be service, there needs to be support, because the value that we want to provide the customer and for them to not be like, hey, I can find this for $1 cheaper elsewhere is, okay, what is that customer doing with the equipment? You know, what's their next purchase going to look like so we can make sure that what they're doing is making sense this time around. What does their budget look like? And really understanding that, because, you know, we're not, and our salespeople are not motivated by saying, okay, I want to sell them this because it's a bad stock item. It's, you know, we want to win over customers for the long term. So that's, you know, that's our relationship with customers, and our principle is, you know, our reputation matters more than anything at MET. Sashi's been very proud of that since day one, is making sure that, you know, all vendors are happy to work with MET, and same goes with customers. So, you know, just focusing on keeping the customer happy. Sometimes, you know, in any industry, even B2B, sometimes a customer isn't always reasonable. I think everyone knows that. And we still just will keep them happy, send them the replacement, even if we don't think it's needed. You know, bring back the equipment, even if we feel like they're past the warranty or not necessarily operating the equipment in the right way. We know that, look, in the long term, we want our customers to be happy with us, even if sometimes we're not on the same page. And so, you know, focus on a reputation, focus on helping customers. Don't be greedy, share the love. Those things tend to help you in the long term just win at a reasonable pace and sustainable pace.
Yeah. I feel like don't be greedy, share the love. That should just be everyone's motto. That would be helpful. That would be helpful if everyone adopted that mindset.
Well, BrokerBin helps with that. So, you know, you guys own that principle because, you know, you guys have really helped make it so that people can do business together. And you guys have always been very helpful to people getting onboarded and understanding, okay, how do I find product I need? Bob has helped me out in a pinch so many times, you know, so
That's great.
you
I
guys help
appreciate that.
sometimes.
Yeah. And speaking of, MET has been a member since 2007. So what has BrokerBin done for your business, and how does it help you achieve your objectives?
So, you know, IT is sorry, let me start over on that. Time is money. So in the IT industry, time is money, and finding stock quickly is often a bigger challenge than finding it necessarily at the cheaper price or whatever the factor might be. And so how do you find IT equipment quickly? How do you find it reliably? How can you trust the source? How can you get the purchase order out quickly? So what BrokerBin does is we can get a purchase order from a company in, let's say, and I'm going to pick a random country, you know, Egypt, that needs a spare power supply because they can't find it in their local market. They need it on FedEx International Priority out the same day. What BrokerBin enables us to do is vet the customer quickly. They can vet us in the same way, check our reputation, get that purchase order same day, ship it, and trust that, okay, there's a network behind that customer and by the vendor that they can either pay us or we can give them the courtesy of net one so that they can get that power supply out the door to sustain their customer. And every day we're taking purchase orders like that, closing deals because people find stock from us. So all of our longest standing business relationships have come through that BrokerBin network of trust and saying, you know, look, we're built on a reputation. And we want customers to buy from us because they care about those things. And so, you know, we've religiously uploaded our inventory to BrokerBin since 2007. so that people that are looking for the most odd part all the way to 1,000 pieces of 1 stick of RAM, they, if we have that in stock, we want them to know that. And we've never uploaded stock we don't have on the BrokerBin, because ultimately, it's not about being able to source something on BrokerBin for the broker market. It's, how do you provide value to end customers? And so it's enabled us to kind of build a partner ecosystem in that sense.
Yeah. I love that, obviously. I love that. It's really good for us here at BrokerBin to hear that, so that we know this is how the network and the community is in fact supporting members. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
What 3 words would you use to describe BrokerBin?
I think the 3 that come to mind would be transparency, reliability, and connection.
Oh,
So I think it's very healthy for the industry for there to be a level of transparency into inventory, into stock, into who's got what. Because when there's new product hitting the market, it's in everyone's interest that we know, hey, MET's already got 1,000 of this, so the price should reflect the fact that there's already a lot hitting the market. Or maybe, hey, MET should be the one we should offer this to so that we don't hurt the market on this product. So it creates that transparency. It also creates a lot of reliability in terms of, BrokerBin, especially the last few years, has really emphasized things like your following count and your non-following count, and like the star ratings and your percentage health rating. Those are things we check every now and then to make sure, hey, are we on the right track? Because we will use BrokerBin both to vet people we should work with and then rule out people we shouldn't work with. And a lot of the times we'll get an email or something from someone we've not heard the name of, and one of the first things we'll do is we'll check if they're on BrokerBin to see if there's any reputation on them, because if they've got a lot of don't follows or those types of metrics, we'll say, okay, let's tread carefully here. So it gives us a level of reliability, but then I think connection is obvious in this industry. Being able to connect with people quickly and efficiently is important, and we love the BrokerBin conferences, being able to come and see people in person and meet you guys. Renee, you've always made sure there's like some kind of vegan option for me, so it's good for the industry to be a little bit more friendly than just, hey, I buy or sell from you.
Yeah, that's great. Connection is the word that we use here often around the office, and hopefully that's something our members are feeling, is that our goal truly, truly, truly is to connect.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I just shared this story yesterday too, that I've taken to describe what I do as running more of a, or not running, but helping facilitate more of a, like something more comparable to a dating platform than say like an eBay or Amazon or something, right? Because we're a non-transactional site. And it's our goal to just bring people together. That's what we're trying to do. So when you say connection, that makes me very happy, because that is ultimately the goal of our community and of our platform. And one plug for your account managers, I know you mentioned Bob, but for everyone else listening, that's a big role of our account managers, honestly, is to be able to help their members, their clients, make those connections, but then also give feedback and background on other members. So if you have a question about somebody, you're always welcome to call Bob, and he'll let you know what we. Yeah.
Sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It kind of paused.
No, that's okay. No, that's
Bob
okay.
is just
Yeah.
fantastic, and couldn't recommend him or any of the account managers more to anyone. And yeah.
That's awesome. So what advice do you have for members to maximize the value of their membership? Is there something that you do on the site, or a way that you use the site that you feel like would be helpful for others to know?
I think for companies that are kind of coming for the first time, maybe just doing a stock lookup, the first thing I recommend is look at do they have a badge? Do they do they have a shielded quality? Do they have their name highlighted? Do they have real-time inventory? How old is their age of inventory? What's their follower count? Basically how maintained is their BrokerBin profile? Because that really tells you, if they're taking attention to those details, it means that, okay, if they're selling you a power supply, you can trust that it's tested, it's going to be packed well, if they say it's going to go out today, it'll go out today. Those things go hand in hand. When someone's showing age of 10 days on a product, you might reach out and find that it's no longer there. So those basic metrics really help just weed out, okay, where can I go for a quick answer, a reasonable price, someone that's been on the site for a long time. And the other piece is, do use the search features, look up companies in your space, there's a lot of filters that you can use, like which certifications. If you're looking for like an R2V3 company in Texas, for instance, we've uploaded our R2V3 certification to BrokerBin. So you can find an R2 company in pretty much any part of the world through BrokerBin. You can find, if you're looking for a company that deals in quanta, just as an example, you can filter by those keywords in that brand. So do use the search functions, be responsible with it, where you're not just kind of taking a list and sending an email to every single person,
Right.
But find people that actually have some kind of commonality. And if you have stock to move or you're looking to buy something very specific, we pretty much always get a response if we reach out to someone using that, because we have a specific goal in mind with that. And you can often build a pretty quick conversation, if nothing else.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. We talked a bit already about face-to-face conversation and road shows and other industry events and the importance, but how would you pitch the value of in-person communication?
It can never be replaced. BrokerBin makes it so that you can kind of find pricing and inventory pretty quickly, but that doesn't ever tell the full story of what are the trends in the market. What am I expecting to see more of? Where are we having challenges as a business? Even the tangibles of a specific deal, such as, how well is my equipment going to be packaged? Price never gives you those answers. What's going into the testing behind my product? What's the team that's fulfilling my order? So what going to these in-person conferences really helps with is understanding, okay, who am I working with? What are the trends that they're seeing? How do I fit into this broader landscape, and building those conversations so that you can come back and kind of re-strategize, okay, maybe I'm doing things a little bit old-fashioned here. Let me refashion maybe how I'm inventorying some stuff. Let me think about redoing some of this stuff. And a lot of the times that's not a competitive conversation. It can be very mutually helpful, because if we can all inventory and manage our stocks better, there's enough in the ocean for every company like MET to succeed. It's not MET versus some other company out there. This is a big ecosystem that everyone in BrokerBin should ultimately support. So if we can be more efficient with stock, there's more around to go for everyone, rather than us losing money because we're stocking stuff poorly. That's what causes people to get a little bit more defensive. So
of course. Yeah.
That's kind of my take is, it really is a good chance for people to just connect again and get those trends and get a story and put themselves in the bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly. The collaboration piece of it is invaluable, as you mentioned. You just don't get that via exchanging POs and invoices and that kind of stuff. So that's great. That's great. Well, we will be in Texas, and maybe people can take a little side trip to your server Disneyland, right?
We would be more than happy. And the fun thing about the Austin to Dallas road trip, for those who haven't done it, is getting to stop at the famous Buc-ee's. So
yes. Maybe I need to do that, actually. I love Buc-ee's. We don't have that here in the Midwest yet.
It's a Texas concept that's slowly making its way into the Southeast, but would love to host you, Renee, and anyone from the BrokerBin team that wants to come up. And of course,
so fun.
Please come by.
Yeah, that's so fun. So fun. Well, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. Lots of good information from you. So that's wonderful. How can our listeners learn more about MET?
So the best way would be to contact myself or anyone from the MET team. You can find our contact information through our BrokerBin profile. Myself, Sharad, Peter, Atlas, we're all on the BrokerBin page. We'd love to hear from you. You can also visit our website at www.metint.com.
Great. And you guys are active on socials, LinkedIn anyway. Yeah.
LinkedIn and Facebook messages. So we're also on WhatsApp. So depending on where you are, we're pretty tech forward and responding.
Yeah.
So
That's great. Well, thank you again so much for your time. It was really fun chatting. And I love the story. I love your story. I love your family story and the story of the business.
thanks so much, Renee. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks again to Arnav Kejriwal at MET International for joining the podcast. TradeIQ is a production of BrokerBin, the leading global alliance for IT professionals, resellers, and wholesalers. Subscribe to TradeIQ for new episodes as we share the economic stories of IT hardware resale from industry leaders who work tirelessly to expand asset life cycles and eliminate e-waste. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on TradeIQ from BrokerBin.com.